The doorbell rang, that soft, patient ring he always used when he needed something. It had been years since I'd heard it, but I knew that sound like my own heartbeat. I shuffled from the living room to the front door, my slippers brushing against the hardwood floor. When I opened it, there he was, Ethan, my son, wearing that same brown leather jacket that had always looked like it belonged to someone 10 years younger. He had a paper bag from the corner bakery, the one I loved when his father was still alive. "Hey, Mom," he said, like nothing had happened, like he hadn't missed Christmas, my birthday, and 3 calls in a row. I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd stop by. I folded my arms, squinting against the morning light. "You were in the neighborhood?" He smiled a little sheepish. "Yeah. Missed you." That hung in the air for a second. Missed me. Funny how those words sounded when they came from a mouth that had stayed quiet for nearly a year. "Well," I said, finally stepping aside. "Come in then." The house smelled of lemon polish and old photographs. I'd just cleaned the mantel that morning. His father's photo stood in the middle, like it always had, watching. Ethan's eyes landed on it, but he didn't say anything. He followed me into the kitchen. The sunlight hit the countertop just right, making it look cleaner than it really was. He set the bakery bag down. "Croissants," he said. "Almond. Thought you'd like 'em." I poured 2 mugs of tea. He started talking about work, city life, bills, and how exhausting everything was. His voice softened when he mentioned missing home, missing family. The word family came out like it didn't quite fit in his mouth. Then he leaned forward. "You shouldn't be living alone like this, Mom. I could help out more. Maybe come by a little often." I looked at him closely. The lines on his face were sharper now. His hair clipped short like every young man chasing success. My
Still
only
a
was
boy.
Ethan, the same one who used to hide under the kitchen table with comic books and peanut butter crackers. "I'm managing just fine," I said. He smiled faintly. "I know you are. You always do. But maybe we could go over some things. You know, finances, just in case something ever happens." The spoon clinked softly against my mug. I didn't answer right away. Just took a slow sip of tea. He smiled again, too easily. And in that smile, I caught the faintest whiff of something familiar. Not affection. Intention. That night, when the lights dimmed and the house grew still, I found myself wondering, what exactly had Ethan come back for? 3 days later, he came back. No call, no warning. Just the sound of plastic bags rustling on my porch. "Got you some things," Ethan said, kicking the door shut with his heel as he stepped in. His arms were full of groceries, not the kind I buy either. Quinoa, oat milk, imported cheese, all those city items you can't pronounce without a recipe app. "You didn't have to do that," I said, following him into the kitchen. He grinned. "It's nothing. I had coupons." He started unpacking like he owned the place, putting things in the wrong cabinets, rearranging my fridge, moving the spice rack like it was some design project. I didn't stop him, just sat at the table with my lukewarm tea watching. He paused long enough to frown at the jar of pickled beets I'd been working through for weeks. "Mom, you need more fresh stuff. This," he held it up. "This isn't food, it's survival." I smiled faintly. Survival's worked for me so far. He laughed, but there was tension under it. That kind of forced chuckle that says, "Let's not fight about this." When he finally sat across from me, he looked around like he was seeing the kitchen for the first time. "You've kept this place nice," he said. "I've lived here longer than you've been alive," I replied. He nodded slowly. "Still, a lot of people your age downsize, you know? Move to condos, communities. Less to worry about. That made me raise an eyebrow. Less for who to worry about? He blinked. Just thinking out loud. I knew that tone. It was the same voice he'd used the year he borrowed money for that landscaping business that never took root. The same tone he'd used right before his divorce, when he said his ex-wife had some issues. I like my house, I said simply. Don't see a reason to leave it. He held my gaze for a beat, then leaned forward. Mom, there are scams, property frauds, all kinds of things targeting people your age. Maybe we should set something up. You know, power of attorney just to keep things protected. My grip tightened on my mug. I don't need anyone managing my life, Ethan. He smiled again, soft, controlled like a salesman closing a deal. I just want to look out for you. I've looked out for myself for nearly 80 years, I said. And I'm still doing it. That shut him up. For now. Later that night, I took the metal lockbox from my closet, the one holding my will, deed, and Derek's papers, and counted everything twice. Nothing was missing. Yet, the next morning started like any other. Coffee, toast, and the morning paper I barely read anymore. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that presses on your chest when something's off, but you can't name it yet. Around 11, I walked down to the corner market. Gloria, the cashier, double-bagged my milk like she always did. We talked about the weather, the rising price of butter, the usual nothings that keep the day steady. Then I stopped by the post office. Just a few envelopes, a catalog, a phone bill, and one thin white letter stamped with the county seal. I didn't remember sending for anything from the recorder's office, but I slipped it into my purse anyway. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table, the sunlight sharp against the lace curtain, and opened it. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake. An official notice confirming a change of mailing address for my property. My hand stilled on the paper. I hadn't filed any change of address. The new mailing address listed wasn't anywhere near me. An apartment complex across town, in a neighborhood I'd never even driven through. I reread the letter, slower this time, tracing the name of the authorized requester. Ethan James Miller. My son's name, written neat and clear. The middle name was what gave it away. He only used it when he wanted to sound professional. For a long moment I didn't move. The kitchen clock ticked, the refrigerator hummed, and all I could hear was the thudding of my own heartbeat. The air felt heavier. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. Then I stood looking around at the walls that had watched me grow old. The curtains I'd sewn by hand in '92. The bookshelf my late husband built when weekends still meant home projects. The photo of Ethan at 8 years old, holding a toy hammer next to his father. I wasn't naive. I knew what it meant when people started asking about documents, offering to help, and talking about emergencies. I'd seen enough of it in the neighborhood. Quiet fraud done by familiar hands. But proof, I needed proof. That afternoon I made 2 calls. The first was to the county recorder's office. The young man who answered confirmed the change had been processed online, with all appropriate documentation. The second call was to my neighbor, Carol. Did you see anyone around my house last Tuesday? I asked. She hesitated. You mean besides Ethan? My chest tightened. Yeah, she continued. He had a woman with him. Short hair, nice blazer. I thought she was from the bank. I gripped the phone harder. Thank you, Carol. That night I opened the lockbox again. But this time the deed, the one I checked just days ago, was gone. I checked the lockbox again, certain I'd made a mistake. The flashlight beam trembled slightly as I shuffled through folders, birth certificates, the will, Derek's army papers, insurance slips. Everything was there. Except the deed. It wasn't possible. I'd tucked it into the envelope inside my winter coat just 3 nights ago. I checked the coat too, the lining, the pockets, even the hem. Nothing. For a long time I just stood there, the silence buzzing in my ears. The air in the house felt wrong. Like someone had been here when I wasn't. But I wasn't going to panic. Not yet. I poured a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table, the same spot Ethan had sat days earlier, sipping tea and pretending to care. My fingers traced the wood grain as I thought. He'd been coming by more often, showing up without calling, rearranging things, bringing groceries. That last visit, he'd asked for a few papers to look at. Said he needed to help me organize. My gut twisted. The next morning I called the law office that handled our will years ago. It had changed names since Derek passed, but the number was the same. A man named Mr. Feldman answered. Older voice, calm and measured. I told him I needed to verify the status of my property deed. He paused, then asked me to bring any documents I had. We'll check the filings, he said. If there's been activity, we'll find it. I arrived at 10 a.m. sharp, dressed in my gray wool coat. The one Derek used to say made me look ready for a fight. Mr. Feldman met me in a small office lined with books and a coffee machine that hissed softly in the corner. He flipped through the county records on his screen, frowning deeper with every page. Mrs. Miller, he said finally, there's been a recent transfer of title for your property. I felt the words before I understood them. To who? He adjusted his glasses. To your son, Ethan James Miller. The world seemed to shrink around the desk. He continued gently. There's also a power of attorney form attached. Signed 2 weeks ago. It authorizes him to manage and transfer your property. I stared at him. I never signed any power of attorney. Then someone forged your consent, he said. I sat back, my throat tight. My son, my own son, had used my name, my house, my trust. And I wasn't going to let him get away with it. The next call I made wasn't to Ethan. It was to the notary whose name was stamped beneath that signature. The name on the paperwork was clear as day. Laura Ramirez, commission number 5479. A notary public based downtown. I spent 20 minutes staring at that name before dialing the number printed under it. My hand didn't shake, but my jaw was tight enough to ache. Ramirez Notary Services. A woman answered, cheerful, businesslike. Yes, I said, keeping my voice steady. This is Helen Miller. I believe you notarized a power of attorney form listing me as the principal and my son, Ethan Miller, as the agent. There was a pause, the kind that tells you you've just kicked the floor out from under someone. I'm sorry, she said finally, her tone tightening. We can't discuss notarizations over the phone without proper verification. Privacy policies. I understand, I said. But tell me this. Did I come into your office personally? Another pause. Longer this time. Ma'am, she began carefully. Unless you visit in person, I can't confirm or deny any details. Then I'll be there today. It took me nearly an hour to get downtown. The elevator in the old brick building smelled like cleaning solution and stress. Suite 402. A narrow office with beige walls, fake plants, and a front desk covered in pins and business cards. A young woman looked up from her computer. "Mrs. Miller?" she asked softly. I nodded. "Laura will see you now." The woman behind the desk in the back room looked younger than I'd expected. Maybe late 30s, polished but tired around the eyes. She rose when I entered. "Mrs. Miller, I remember you," she said with relief, like my showing up proved she hadn't made a mistake. "You do?" I asked. "Yes, of course. You signed the documents at your house. Your son requested mobile services. I came with him about 2 weeks ago." I froze. "That's impossible," I said quietly. "I was at a doctor's appointment that afternoon." She blinked confused. "But I met you. I remember your kitchen. You were wearing a gray sweater." I pulled my driver's license from my purse and held it up. "Do you recognize this face?" Her eyes widened. Color drained from her cheeks. "Oh my God," she whispered. "That wasn't you." The room went silent except for the hum of the old wall clock. "I'll be filing a report," I said finally, calm but unflinching. She nodded weakly. "I understand. I'll cooperate fully." When I stepped back out into the cool November air, I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was something sharper resolved. By the time I got home, one thing was certain: Ethan hadn't just crossed a line. He'd erased it. And I was going to draw it back in ink. The next morning, I didn't wait for appointments or callbacks. I walked straight into Mr. Feldman's office. Same gray suit, same no-nonsense face, same calm patience that only decades of law can give you. His secretary gave me that polite smile reserved for people who show up unannounced. But when he saw me in the doorway, he waved me in. I didn't waste time. I dropped the stack of papers on his desk. The forged power of attorney, the name of the notary, and my written statement. He looked them over in silence, flipping each page slowly, like every word had weight. Then he sighed. "Mrs. Miller, this is going to be messy." "I've handled worse," I said. "I just need to know where to start." He nodded and grabbed a yellow legal pad. "First, we file a formal complaint with the Secretary of State's office against the notary. If she confirmed identity without proper verification, that's administrative fraud." "Already confirmed it," I said. "She admitted someone else signed in my place." His pen froze mid-word. "Then that's more than administrative. That's criminal." He leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen against his chin. "Second, we file a dispute with the county clerk to void the deed transfer. If the power of attorney is invalid, the transfer itself collapses with it." "Good," I said. "And third," he continued, his eyes lifting to meet mine, "you go to the police. This is identity theft and fraud. There's no way around it." The word police hit harder than I expected. I didn't want to see my son's name in a report, didn't want to become that mother, the one whose child betrayed her in ink and silence. But what choice did I have? By the end of the hour, the notary complaint was filed, scanned, and submitted with my statement attached. Feldman's assistant included the proof of my doctor's visit that day, date stamped, time stamped, undeniable. Then I drove to the police station. The building was clean but tired, like it had heard every kind of story. A young officer, head shaved, steady eyes, listened as I told mine. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "We'll open a report, Mrs. Miller. You'll get a case number. Fraud Division will follow up." I thanked him, took the paperwork, and walked out into the cold air. The sky was sharp blue, too bright for a day like this. For the first time in a week, I didn't feel fear. I felt motion. But motion has a way of stirring things up. And that night the phone rang. When I picked it up, it was Ethan. The phone rang just after 3 in the afternoon. The caller ID flashed unknown number. But I already knew. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hello, Mom." His voice. Smooth, cautious. That tone he used when he wasn't sure if the door was locked or open. "Ethan." A pause. "I've been meaning to call. Everything okay?" "Just fine," I said, though my heart thumped slow and heavy. He cleared his throat. "Listen, Mom. I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. I've been getting calls from people, the county, the bank, and I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page." "We're not," I said. Silence. "I know about the documents, Ethan. The power of attorney. The forged signature." His breath hitched through the line. "Mom, wait. It's not. I spoke with the notary," I cut in. "She remembers someone signing in my kitchen. Only I wasn't there. So tell me, who was she?" He said nothing for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight. "You went to the police?" "Yes." "You didn't have to do that," he snapped. "I was trying to protect you. Make sure things were handled if something happened. You've been old." I finished for him. He groaned, frustrated. "Mom, that's not what I meant. You live alone, you're vulnerable." "Stop," I said sharply. "I've been taking care of myself longer than you've been alive. Vulnerable doesn't live here." He exhaled hard. "You're blowing this out of proportion. This could ruin everything." "Who's everything?" I asked quietly. "Because I haven't lost a thing." There was a small bitter laugh on his end. "You don't understand. I'm drowning here, Mom. I thought maybe it was time the house started working for someone else. Someone who needs it." I closed my eyes, my throat tightening. "Someone," I repeated softly. "You mean you." He didn't deny it. I could almost hear him pacing, breathing through his teeth like a trapped man looking for a way out. "Ethan," I said at last, my voice steady, "I loved you enough to give you everything you needed, but I won't love you enough to let you take what isn't yours." He was silent. Then a sharp inhale. "So that's it? You're turning on me." "No," I said. "You turned first." And I hung up. That night I didn't sleep. Because the next time the doorbell rang, I had a feeling it wouldn't just be Ethan. And I was right. The knock came 2 nights later. Late enough that no visitor had good reason to be there. The clock read 9:17 p.m. I froze in the hallway, tea mug still warm in my hand. 3 knocks, measured and polite. I turned on the porch light and pulled the curtain back just a little. Ethan. And he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a woman I didn't recognize. Tall, with sharp features and a coat that looked more corporate than casual. Her arms were folded tight. Her expression polished. I opened the door but didn't step aside. "Evening," I said flatly. "Mom," Ethan started, his voice a mix of charm and nerves. "Can we come in?" "No." He blinked. Mom! The woman stepped forward slightly, her smile rehearsed. Mrs. Miller, I'm Victoria Jansen. I'm a family advisor. I've been working with Ethan on some. Are you an attorney? I asked. She hesitated. No, ma'am. Then you can speak from the porch. That threw her off balance, but she recovered quickly. We just want to clear the air. There's been a misunderstanding about some documents. Forging a signature isn't a misunderstanding, I said evenly. Ethan's jaw clenched. Mom, please. This is out of control. Police, lawyers, you're making it worse. We could lose everything. I repeated. What exactly have you lost? He shifted, glancing at the woman like he needed her to rescue him. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I'm under a lot of pressure. I've got bills, the kids' tuition, the house. I thought maybe your place could help you, I finished for him. Help you pay for the life you chose. He sighed, looking small for the first time. You don't understand how hard it's been, Mom. You've got this paid-off house, no mortgage, no debt. I earned that. I cut in. Every shingle, every beam, every dollar. Your father and I built it when we had nothing but hope and a hammer. Victoria stepped in, her voice syrupy smooth. Mrs. Miller, surely there's something Ethan can do to make this right. There is, I said. He can leave my porch. The air went still. Ethan's shoulders dropped. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. The woman gave me one last look, not pity, just annoyance, and followed him down the walkway. I stood there until their taillights vanished down the street. When I closed the door, the house felt warmer. Not because of who had left, but because of who had stayed. But peace doesn't come easy. And by the end of that week, what Ethan tried to steal would land him somewhere much colder than my front porch. The official notice came in a plain envelope. No drama, no warning. Just a line of text at the top. Hearing scheduled. Miller versus Miller, County Civil Court, Room 204. The irony didn't escape me. Wednesday morning smelled like rain and resolve. I dressed the way my husband used to say made me look like I meant business. Navy skirt suit, low heels, pearl earrings. I hadn't worn them since his funeral. Clara, my granddaughter, arrived right on time. Her curls were pinned back, her eyes focused. You ready, Grandma? As I'll ever be, I said, slipping the case file into my purse. At the courthouse, Mr. Feldman met us in the hallway, flipping through notes. You're solid, he said. Truth is simple. Fraud never is. We entered a small courtroom that smelled faintly of paper and coffee. The judge, a woman with silver hair and eyes sharp enough to slice through excuses, scanned the file before speaking. This case concerns a disputed property transfer, she said calmly. Mrs. Miller, you allege that your son filed a fraudulent deed using a forged power of attorney. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. She turned to Ethan. He sat across the aisle in a pressed shirt, tie knotted too tight, looking like a man who'd rehearsed his humility. Mr. Miller, the judge said, do you contest your mother's statement? He cleared his throat. Your Honor, there's been a misunderstanding. I did file the paperwork, but only to help my mom manage her assets. I never intended to. The judge raised a hand. You filed a transfer of title, Mr. Miller. That's not management. That's ownership. Ethan faltered, glancing toward the table where Victoria, his so-called family advisor, sat pretending to read a folder. The judge continued, "The notary involved has admitted to verifying this signature without proper ID, which invalidates the document. Therefore, your claim to ownership is null." Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't look up. "I am reinstating the original deed under Helen Miller's name, effective immediately," the judge said firmly. "And I'm referring the matter to the district attorney's office for possible criminal review." The gavel came down once, clean, final. Outside the courthouse, the air was crisp. Clara hugged me tightly, her voice shaking with relief. "You did it." "No," I said softly, watching Ethan disappear down the steps without a word. "We did." For the first time in months, my name, my real unborrowed name, belonged exactly where it should. But as I'd soon learn, even after a gavel falls, not every story is finished. And Ethan still had one last phone call to make. A week passed after the hearing. The house was calm again. Not empty, not lonely, just quiet. I'd started folding laundry when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. But some part of me, that stubborn mother piece that never quite stops caring, picked it up anyway. "Hello." There was a pause. Then softly, "Mom." It was Ethan. His voice sounded smaller than I'd ever heard it, drained of all the polish and pitch. "I didn't think you'd answer," he said. "I almost didn't." Silence. Then he breathed out slow, shaky. "I just wanted to say, I didn't think it'd go this far." "It didn't go this far, Ethan," I said evenly. "You took it there." He didn't argue. I could hear movement, maybe pacing, maybe guilt. "I'm going to lose a lot," he murmured. "You already did," I said. "You just don't see it yet." He was quiet for a long time before finally speaking. "I was desperate, Mom. I didn't know what else to do." "You could have asked," I said. "You could have come to me as a son, not a thief." That hit him. I could feel it through the silence. "I'm still your son," he said finally. "Yes," I said softly. "And I'll always carry the ache of that. But I won't carry the damage anymore." He sighed. A long, tired exhale that sounded a lot like surrender. "So that's it, huh? You'll never talk to me again." "I didn't say that," I replied. "But I won't pretend you didn't try to erase me. And I won't pretend to feel safe around you." He didn't answer. Then, almost a whisper, "Goodbye, Mom." "Goodbye, Ethan." He hung up first. I stood there for a long time, listening to the refrigerator hum and the steady tick of the kitchen clock. Nothing in the house had changed, but somehow everything had. Later that day, Clara stopped by with a small white plant in a ceramic pot, a peace lily. "It's for the kitchen window," she said, smiling softly. We had tea and sat outside in the yard. The late afternoon light stretched across the grass, gold and forgiving. "You know," Clara said, "you stood up for yourself, and for everyone else like you. That matters." I smiled, tracing the rim of my cup. "It wasn't about proving anything," I said. "It was about keeping what's mine, what I built." She nodded, eyes bright. "And you did." That evening, I placed the lily on the windowsill. The light caught its leaves, turning them soft and green. I didn't know if Ethan would ever call again. Maybe he would. Maybe not. But the house, my house, finally felt safe again. And so did I. Because sometimes survival isn't loud or heroic. Sometimes it's just a woman in her kitchen, refusing to hand over the keys to her own life.